In Europe, specifically on the Eastern Front, countries bordering and allied with Russia are continuously losing their stability. Where NPR, on November 2nd of 2020, explains that Russia over the past couple years has increased its aggression in Eastern Europe, and the organization, specifically the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, has lost its grip on the country itself. Where the Department of Defense, on October 21st of 2020, explains that the effectiveness of NATO comes with its reliance to stop Russian aggression and only remains effective when countries and influences work together within the organization. However, over the past 4 years, with tensions within NATO, disagreements on spending within GDPs, and the threat of the United States pulling out of NATO together, it seems like the organization has lost its grasp on Russia and of itself. And considering that NATO is running out of time to respond to recent Russian aggression, it is imperative that we ask today's question: is NATO an effective counterweight to Russian aggression in Eastern Europe? And the answer is no, because Russian aggression continues to increase while NATO continues to not respond. For 3 reasons. First, because Russian intervention in Belarus continues to incite violence. Second, because internal government corruption is halting German agreements. And finally, because Russia instigates new proxy wars in the Mediterranean. But for the first reason, because Russian intervention in Belarus continues to incite violence. The New York Times, on October 9th of 2020, explains that Putin has spent years building his power within Eastern Europe, and recent protests in Belarus and in Kyrgyzstan are a threat to that power he maintains. And Putin is going to continue to maintain that power through military and police intervention within Belarus. As BBC, on October 23rd of 2020, explains that Belarus has needed help from Russia to maintain its stability after President Lukashenko was deemed president due to delegitimate elections. And in police interventions from Russia, they've been able to arrest protesters over the past month to maintain whatever power Russia has over Belarus. This is the same for protests in Kyrgyzstan and countries bordering Russia. That's the more protests they have, the more violence that comes from Russia in arresting, military intervention, and the stopping of democracy and protests altogether. In this case, we see that NATO has not yet responded, and instead, we look to the European Union, where the BBC, on October 23rd of 2020, again states that the European Union has been the only one to incur sanctions on Belarus and to maintain some stability within the region, and NATO has not done a thing. But for the second reason that NATO is not an effective counterweight to Russian aggression, because internal government corruption is halting German agreements. Where the Washington Post, on October 18th of 2020, explains that Alexei Navalny's poisoning has been proven to be done by Putin and the Russian government, and Germany has been the only one to respond in attempts to threaten halting the Nord Stream project. In the idea that the NBC, on October 23rd of 2020, explains that the EU and Germany have taken power against Russia in their aggression of stopping democratic processes within and organizations within Russia and Moscow to maintain his authoritarian power over the country and the region itself. In this case, once again, we see that only the European Union and Germany themselves have been able to try and fight against Russian aggression, while NATO stands in the back, and they're losing their grip on Russia itself. We see that within this aggression and power, they continue to maintain their authoritarian power, increase instability within the region and within itself, and continue to threat the rest of the European Union countries. But for the third reason, because Russia instigates new proxy wars within the Mediterranean. Where the Greek City Times, on October 29th of 2020, explains that Russia has attacked Turkey-backed Syrian bases within Syria and has continued to increase aggression on Turkey. And with this increased aggression on Turkey, NATO has once again fallen out of reach. Where Forbes, on October 29th of 2020, explains that the United States continues to push NATO for aggressive sanctions upon Russia to further suppress their aggression. However, NATO has not yet responded, and tensions between Turkey and Russia are on the continuous rise, where Turkey has now threatened Syria with more military intervention to prove a proxy war with Russia, to prove who has the most power. And in this case, Syria will be harmed in the end. We see that NATO has not really done much to help prove effective in stopping Russian aggression. They haven't responded, and they simply are not listening to what's happening within the world. But when looking back at today's question, is NATO an effective counterweight to Russian aggression in Eastern Europe? The answer is no, because Russian aggression continues to rise without an effective NATO response, for 3 reasons. First, because Russian intervention in Belarus continues to incite violence. Second, because internal government corruption is halting German agreements. And third, because Russia instigates new proxy wars within the Mediterranean. Considering that NATO is losing its grasp on Russia and failing to respond in their aggressive attacks only further instigates Russia to continue in its aggression, halting any new further progress and effectiveness that they may have in the future to stop Russia from doing any more harm to Eastern Europe or the rest of Europe itself.